country music has always been about real stories and truth.
He don't love me like tequila does.
Country star Miranda Lambert grew up in a house with no heat and an outhouse in the freezing dark. But that wasn't the worst part. At just 6 years old, her parents dressed her in a cheerleading costume and sent her out to gather evidence in adult cases. By the time she was 7, their investigation files ended up in a presidential impeachment. And the secrets she learned during those years would haunt her music forever. This is the story of a little girl who saw too much, lost too much, and paid a price nobody should have to pay. Miranda Lee Lambert came into the world on November 10, 1983 in Longview, Texas, carrying a family story in her name. She was named after her great-grandmother, Lucy Miranda. So even as a baby, she was tied to something older than herself. Soon her parents moved to Lindale, a small Texas town that looked simple from the outside, but held a lot of strain behind closed doors. When Miranda was 6, the life they knew cracked. Her parents' private detective agency collapsed after the Texas oil crisis hit hard in 1989, and money vanished faster than they could chase it. They lost their home. The family moved in with relatives, trying to catch their breath, and then ended up renting a worn farmhouse with boarded-up windows and no central heat. Winter nights there were brutal. Miranda had to run to an outhouse in the freezing dark. The refrigerator was often empty. Some days, dinner was whatever they could hunt, fish, or gather. It was survival, not comfort. She watched her parents try to hold everything together, and that early poverty settled in her bones and taught her that nothing was guaranteed and hard work was not optional. Her parents, Rick and Bev Lambert, did not have quiet office jobs. They were private investigators, and their work bled into the household. Miranda grew up around case files, whispered names, and quiet tension. Sometimes she was pulled into it. When she was about 6 or 7, they dressed her in a cheerleading costume and sent her out to help gather evidence in a cheating spouse case because nobody would suspect a child. She walked into adult messes long before she should have. Then in 1994, her parents were hired by lawyers working for Paula Jones to dig into President Bill Clinton. It was national news territory. Their files were later subpoenaed and became part of the impeachment proceedings in the House. Miranda watched strangers argue about things that had started on her parents' dining room table. Those years were full of real danger, real secrets, and real betrayals. And all of that would later show up in her songs. Her dad brought another world into the house, too. Before he became a private investigator, Rick Lambert had been a Dallas police officer and a guitarist in a country rock band called Contraband. During the 1970s, he kept that side of himself alive. At home, he played Merle Haggard, Guy Clark, John Prine, and other songwriters who told hard truths with simple words. Miranda soaked it in. He put a guitar in her hands and showed her chords. And he treated songwriting like work, not magic. Even when money was tight, her parents pushed her toward music. They believed in it so much that they later used money that could have gone to her college costs to fund her early performances. By the time her first album came along, she was writing with her father, and their names sat together in the credits, a quiet sign of how deep that family music line really ran. By 13, the things she had seen and heard were already turning into songs. She was a teenager in East Texas, but her lyrics carried the weight of adults who had been through divorces, affairs, and courtrooms. Her family moved from Longview to Lindale, and the detective work kept bringing dark stories to their doorstep. Those stories found their way into her notebooks. She began singing in East Texas honky-tonks, smoky rooms where grown men nursed beers, and did not expect a young girl to walk out and own the stage. Yet, audiences fell silent when she started. At 16, she fronted the house band at Rio Palm Isle, a legendary club where Elvis Presley and Willie Nelson had once played. That room did not care about her age. It cared about whether she could command it. She learned how to handle hecklers, how to stare someone down, how to keep singing when someone yelled something ugly. Those nights gave her that sharp edge people would later hear in her voice. Around that time, she tried out for the Johnny High Country Music Review in Arlington, Texas. The same weekly show that had jump-started LeAnn Rimes. She walked on stage at 16 and sang Patty Klein's song Crazy. It was not an easy choice because everyone knew that song. And everyone had an opinion on it. Her delivery caught the judges. The review was strict and old-fashioned, filled with people who had heard hundreds of hopefuls, but she stood out enough to keep getting invited back. It was the first time she felt what professional scrutiny really meant. At the same time, some people in that scene told her she was too country even for country music. The insult stung, but it did not stop her. It lit a fire that would someday become songs about women who refused to sit still. Then came a turning point. In 2000, when she was 17, a family connection helped arrange a recording session in Nashville. Her father spent $6,000, almost everything they had saved, to give her a shot in the town she had dreamed about. She walked into the studio expecting to make country music. Instead, the producers pushed shiny pop, leaning tracks that did not feel like her at all. They tried to smooth out the rough edges that had been built into her life. Miranda felt herself disappearing from her own songs. Finally, she walked out devastated because she knew what that $6,000 meant to her family. Later, she would call it a cheap lesson because it showed her clearly what she never wanted to do again. Back in Texas, she turned that disappointment into work. She begged her dad to teach her more guitar, sat for hours practicing until her fingers hurt, and started turning her anger and stubbornness into original songs. These early tracks were simple and raw, full of heartbreak, suspicion, and rebellion. By 17, she had written enough material for an album. In 2001, she recorded 10 songs in a makeshift home studio, far away from the polished Nashville system. She put her own name on the cover, pressed the CDs herself and sold them at local shows. That little independent album was proof that she did not need someone in a glass office to give her permission. All of this led to her first big national stage. In 2003, when she was 19, Miranda auditioned for the new television competition Nashville Star. Instead of picking a safe cover, she chose an original song that she had written with her father called Greyhound Bound for Nowhere. The song told the story of a secret affair with a married person, a story she had not lived, but had watched through her parents' private investigations. She told the judges that she had not faced many of those pains herself yet, but she had seen what betrayal did to people. Over 8,000 singers tried to get on the show that year. Only 12 were chosen. Miranda was one of them. During the 9-week run, she kept turning heads. She did not have the perfect polish some contestants had, but she had something rougher that people remembered. She sang songs like Hell On Heels with a calm kind of fire, and audiences started to feel like they knew her. Behind the scenes, there were battles. Producers pushed her to wear more revealing clothes to fit the television image they wanted. She refused. She chose jeans and boots instead, clothes that matched the Texas bars she had come from. That stubbornness almost cost her, but it also showed everyone around her that she would not trade herself in for a slot on a show. Later, she said the whole experience felt like going to college. It taught her camera work, stagecraft, and also how fake and political the business could be. When the season ended, she finished in third place behind Buddy Jewell and John Arthur Martinez. Yet her audition and performances became some of the moments fans kept replaying. Someone important had been watching. Tracy Jurgen, a Sony music executive, saw something in her that other label people missed. While some executives doubted that a sharp-tongued, pistol-ready young woman could sell records, he kept pushing his company to take a chance. After the show ended, Miranda did not go home and wait by the phone. She hit the road. She played more than 200 shows a year in Texas, opening for acts like Tergro and Jack Ingram, especially at places like Love and War in Texas. Night after night, she loaded in, played, and loaded out, slowly building a crowd that came specifically for her. In September 2003, just months after her third place finish, Sony Nashville finally signed her. The deal was worth $300,000. A huge leap from the farmhouse with boarded windows and the empty fridge. It meant she could quit her waitressing job and pour herself into music full-time. But it also meant she had to move to Nashville and leave her familiar Texas life. That move would test how much control she could keep. Once in Nashville, Miranda did something risky. She insisted on live instruments on her first major label record. She was working on an album called Kerosene and co-producing tracks with Frank Little and Mike Rucker. Most labels preferred cleaner, more polished tracks built in big studios, but Miranda wanted the stomp and scrape of real players in a room. Sony wanted a smoother, more crossover-ready sound. She pushed back. She argued that the raw live feeling matched the stories she was telling. Those fights were tense, but she held her ground. When Kerosene came out in February 2005, the gamble paid off. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart and sold about 53,000 copies in its first week, something almost unheard of for a brand new artist. The title track, Kerosene, told a revenge story about burning down an ex-lover's house. Radio programmers were stunned by the violent image. Conservative listeners started sending angry letters. Some people said she was glorifying arson. Others, especially women who felt unseen, felt like someone had finally said what they had only imagined. Even with all the noise, the song climbed to number 15 on the country charts and stamped her with a new label in the press, the bad girl of country. The album did not just sound tough. It was built that way. Critics praised the live sound and called Kerosene something rare in modern mainstream country. A project that was catchy and friendly, yet sharper and more honest than it first looked. Songs like Kerosene and the early shape of what would later become Gunpowder and Lead carried a kind of anger that had not often been given to female singers. The same lyrics that made some people nervous became a lifeline for others, especially women tired of tidy endings. Miranda knew the backlash was part of it. She went on television and said calmly, "It is fantasy. Women have anger, too." That one line turned into a rallying quote for her fans. The success did not come without a price. To promote Kerosene, she went on a grueling tour schedule, playing around 250 dates in about 18 months, including opening slots for country giant George Strait. One night during a show, a guitar string snapped in the middle of a song. She did not stop. She kept singing and playing through it, and the crowd watched her push past the mistake. Moments like that slowly turned skeptical audiences into believers. By 2006, the album had gone platinum. Yet, the constant travel and pressure caught up with her. At one point, she collapsed backstage from Exhaustion after a show. It was a warning sign of the burnout that would haunt her later, but it also showed how far she was willing to push herself for the work. Her second major album, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, took what Kerosene had started and pushed it even further. By 2007, she was back with another set of sharp songs. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart and reached number 6 on the all-genre Billboard 200. More than 55,000 copies sold in the first week. The lead single, Famous in a Small Town, was rooted in her real Texas life. The kind of place where everybody knows your business before you do. The song reached number 7 on the country chart and number 52 on the Hot 100, giving her the first top 10 country hit of her career. The album was full of revenge, heartbreak, and small-town stories. And tracks like Gunpowder and Lead made it clear she was not interested in softening herself for radio. Behind the scenes, she was fighting for control again. During the making of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Miranda decided that the sound was slipping away from her. She felt the production moving closer to the safer Nashville template she had rejected before. At just 23 years old, she made a daring move. She fired a producer halfway through recording and took over the production role herself. That almost never happened for young artists at the time. Especially for women. The choice strained her relationship with her label, but it saved the album's grit. Without that decision, songs like Gunpowder and Lead might not have sounded as fierce as they did. The move shocked people in town and sent a clear message that she would not hand her voice over to someone else. Her rise started showing up in award shows, too. In 2007, the Academy of Country Music named her Female Vocalist of the Year. She was just 23, standing in a category with heavy hitters like Faith Hill and Martina McBride, women who had been ruling radio for years. Her win was an upset and it stirred up talk in Nashville. Some insiders still saw her as a risky newcomer. There were rumors of bruised egos and quiet feuds. Whispers of people forming rival circles. In response to the shift. For Miranda, that moment marked a turning point. It proved that the industry could not ignore her anymore, no matter how fiery her songs were. Around this time, her private heartbreak began to surface in more vulnerable tracks. The song More Like Her, the fourth single from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, climbed to number 17 on the country charts in early 2009.